Ideagen TV. Today, I am ecstatic to have with us from the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, Amy Porfiri, Managing Director of the Foundation, and Dr. Vedrana Hodzic, APAF's Director for Fellowships and Medical Education. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, it's an exciting time. We are at the midterms. Not those midterms. We're at the midterms of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Those 17 global goals that were agreed to unanimously by all 193 member states in 2015. And we're now looking at this runway to 2030 and the destigmatization of mental health and taking that first step toward that journey which the APAF is leading. And we're so beyond ecstatic to be part of that journey with you all. I'd like to ask you about the journey. Could you tell us a little bit about this journey that you're on and that we're on together? And specifically, Amy, how did you come to become also the managing director? How does that all happen?
Sure. I would say it was a continuous road that led me there. I have always worked in nonprofit organizations. I've always worked in the area of research and education. And I decided after my undergraduate degree, which I studied religion, which was really a field I didn't feel like I was going to actually go into as a profession, but it gave me a good, strong liberal arts background. I took time off when I had my kids. I left the workforce for about 5 years, and during that time, I got an MBA while I was raising, my babies and toddlers, and then went back to work and had an opportunity at APA, over 20 years ago, to go in and work with the Division of Research, which really combined, my skills at that time in research administration. I really was so fortunate over the years for my role to change at APA and to grow and to be chosen for special projects that gave me new experiences over the time and to just continue my professional development. So I moved into the foundation about 7 years ago because I was so interested in the work that they do out in communities, really that, where our members are really making an impact in communities, and how can we as a foundation take their work and serve leaders in sectors, workplaces, schools, justice system, faith communities. And I moved up in my position to a deputy director and served as an interim executive director when we were recruiting our current executive director, Raul Andrews, and then was able to go back to a role as managing director. So I've been in one organization for over 20 years, but my role has really grown and evolved and always stayed fresh, over the years, which has really, kept me there.
Well, and you can see how you have made such an incredible impact. I mean, when you think about, it's so extraordinary to think about over the past just 7 years, where mental health has come to the fore. And I know you've played a huge role in that. Your organization has played an outsized role in helping to destigmatize the talk around mental health. Mm-hmm. And you see it everywhere, and you're playing and leading that role. So we're deeply grateful at Ideagen Global to be helpful to amplify that role. Dr. Hodzic, it's Women's History Month, and you are leading the way. You're leading the way on this journey. How does Women's History Month play into the whole notion of mental health and mental health awareness?
So I think Women's History Month is a time to really reflect on the contributions that women have made in the past to kind of forge the way to where we are today. So the opportunities that we have to reflect on our past, but it's also a time to take kind of the current generation and where are we going to go into the future. And in my role, I'm working with a number of resident psychiatrists all over the country, and we're hoping to grow new leaders in the field of psychiatry promote mental health for everyone. Connections that, I'm seeing go back to Dorothea Dix in the 1800s, who really pushed providing humane mental health treatment for everyone. Today, there's a lot of adversity that women face, and they show a lot of resilience. And so that's also a time to validate that resilience and everything that they've built.
And you bring up, those leaders. And I think it's always important to take just a moment to remember that we all stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on the shoulders of giants, like you mentioned, Dorothea, because there's an opportunity to highlight them, to remember them. Like we always do at Ideagen with our great friend, mentor, leader, statesman, the former Congressman Louis Stokes. I don't know that there's an interview that goes by where I don't mention it, because we do stand on his shoulders, and so many others like him, that if the world had more of, we'd all be living in a much greater, more collegial place. So I'll just leave it at that. This is for both of you. We'll start with Amy. Amy, could you describe the state of women's mental health in America today? And then certainly Dr. Hodzic, if you want to opine on that as well, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak, from a personal perspective. I think COVID was challenging, obviously, for everybody. I don't think, there's anybody that went through COVID without a personal experience with themselves or their family, challenge to their mental health. That period of isolation, not being with loved ones, was so challenging. And I don't, think we're fully out of it yet. I think the impact is still being felt as we kind of adjust to this new normal. And, and there's, a real issue with access to mental health care. There's one, taking that step to seek mental health care when you feel like you need it, and then having that access be there, having a provider available to you. So, I think we've seen a lot of really important changes through telehealth that has helped with accessibility. I think that, I think it's a challenging time, not just for women, but for everybody. So I think talking about mental health and having those conversations where people are more comfortable talking about it really is so important.
That's such a good point. And it has affected everyone. I mean, for the first time, as we like to talk about this issue, because it's important to shine a great spotlight on it, it's incumbent upon us to do that because the entire planet faced the same exact, and is still facing and coming out of the same exact situation. Lockdowns across the planet. First time in human history where everyone everywhere experienced the same exact thing. And I agree. I think the world is just emerging from the, call it what you want, the trauma of the mental health trauma that we've come through. And so I think having the ability to talk about it openly is so powerful, which is why this conversation is so exciting. Dr. Hodzic, would you like to add to that?
Yes. I think the other point is to really recognize how common mental health concerns are. So yes, with COVID, everything is much more amplified, but even before then, about 20% of women in America had a mental health concern. So that can include depression, anxiety, trauma, eating disorders. There's also kind of the idea of women's mental health more classically has been thought of as the time of pregnancy, postpartum, but we're really recognizing that there's a lot more to it, and there are many centers across the country and even new fellowship programs for residents where they can learn how to care for women at various stages in life and the differences between treating a mental health concern in a woman compared to a man.
Sure, and it's profound when you think about it, especially within the context of Women's History Month, because there's always been an issue that folks have not been able to talk freely about, especially women in society and societies across the world. And the fact that the APAF and the APA are leading the charge with the First Step campaign and through all of your programs is remarkable again. And to hear from you all during Women's History Month makes it much more powerful, because the millions of people that will watch this interview on Ideagen TV will understand the direction and, quite frankly, more importantly, the leadership that you're exemplifying as women in your field, in the field of mental health, to change and destigmatize mental health. And that for me is everything. And so as we look at cultural and societal factors in mental health, specifically that impact women's health, what steps can be taken to address these issues? Dr. Hodzic first, please.
Well, I think one of the issues we also have to remember is that women are half of our workforce. So there are competing time limits to caretaking, the work. And so access and time to actually seek mental health is an important part of this. Socially, there are also barriers where mental health is really not recognized the same way as other medical conditions, but not only that it is a treatable medical condition. So there's still barriers in understanding, even if someone may understand it themselves, getting buy-in from their family. Sometimes there's more judgment around seeking help. And I think that's where, again, kind of that connection to Women's History Month comes in, where, we celebrate people who had courage to do things first, to take steps. And it's the same thing with mental health. Sometimes it can be very brave to take that first step when people around you are kind of dismissing what you're trying to do.
That's right. Thank you, Doctor. Amy, did you want to follow up on that?
And I think what Dr. Hodzic said was so true. And then I think, when we're out in our daily lives and we see somebody that, a friend or a coworker that we know is, something's different. Something's, they seem like they're struggling with something. Knowing how to have those conversations, I think, even, knowing what to say, we notice it, but how do we talk? How do we break, break that barrier to know that you care? And then finally, what's that step of action that we can help somebody? And that's going to look different, whether you see a student, whether you see an employee, whether you see somebody in your congregation. But those steps of noticing, talk, and act is sort of the framework that we build a lot of the foundation's programs around. And just educating leaders within our sectors of community, really how to take those steps.
It's remarkable. And I think about just recently, Equal Pay Day. Equal Pay Day. It's you can't even imagine that it takes women up until a day in March working to equal the pay that men perhaps are making in that same job or in that same field. And so that goes back to that mental health piece and the pressure and the ability to identify folks that are struggling in some way, whether it's financially or otherwise. All of these factors, I believe, come into play, right? I mean, that's all part of who you are. And so as we're looking at all these messages in society and on TV, my gosh, how can you not have a day where you're not doing well? You need resilience. I know that the foundation is focused on resilience. And I'd like for you all to just mention a little bit about that. How, practically, how can someone become resilient? Dr. Hodzic, how do you begin to be resilient?
So I think this is sort of the preventative aspect to mental health care, and the APA actually has a self-care toolkit. A lot of it focuses on mindfulness, breathing techniques. So there are different activities that you can implement in your life, and it's very helpful to structure your day. So if you look at your activities and then find a slot that you can reserve for self-care, you're more likely to kind of stick to it if it's already scheduled there. The other part that the APA in our workbook has is also how to set boundaries and limits, how to prioritize what you're doing and being able to say no, which can be difficult for a lot of folks.
It can be. Amy, any follow-up to that? I know it's,
Yeah, I think that, I just think that is so true. We do need to take care of ourselves. Women are caretakers. I think by nature, we are taking care of oftentimes our families and our kids, and we're putting that first, and our jobs, right? We're putting that first, and sort of caring for ourselves is always sort of the leftover if there's time, if there's anything that can be, taken out of the day, it's that. I think it's so important, whether it's, whatever ritual that works for you, whether it's, even just sitting and having a cup of tea in silence, or going for a walk, just building that in, having a friend to talk to. It's just, we often, I'm guilty of it, and leave that out. But, it really is so important, and you feel better when you do it.
well, and from what I've read and from the hundreds and hundreds of interviews we've done, I think only recently, and thanks to your hard work and leadership at the foundation and at the APA, have folks really started to focus on self-care. I've never heard, I've heard it and I've read it over the years, but there's been an uber focus on it, thanks to your efforts again on that component of taking care of yourself as well. If you think back thousands of years ago, Aristotle said, and I'll say it in Greek, "ban metronadiston," which means everything in moderation. And that also goes to work. It goes to everything. If you work out too much, you'll probably have an injury, right? So you can't do anything in excess. And I think that the world pre-COVID was perhaps leaning on the excess side, which was burning people out. I think what I'm seeing come out of COVID is a balance. And even speaking, especially during Women's History Month, which makes it extremely special, speaking about self-care and not just drive your career, but there's a self-care component and schedule it in, it means that there's a balance that the foundation is really leading on and helping the society across the planet understand the importance of. And that's what I find incredibly, incredibly powerful. Talking about challenge, we've talked a lot about challenges today. I don't want to just talk about challenges, but what are some of the often overlooked challenges facing women specifically today? And what solutions, we've talked about a few of them, but what solutions do we have to address some of these, Doctor?
So clinically, and kind of going back to that caretaker model, what I've often seen is people wait until you need a much higher level of care. So there are women who come in where it's to the point that they may need more intensive outpatient services or even full inpatient care, but then who's going to be taking care of the children or other family members so that they're not able to actually access those services if they really need them. And now I think our First Step campaign is going to help address that again, kind of working at that prevention model. So start early, get connected to someone while it is still going to be manageable in a traditional outpatient setting.
Wow, incredible. Amy?
Yeah, and I think knowing when self-care is not enough, right? There's so much online about how to do self-care, yoga, meditation, and such. But really, when do you need maybe professional help? And taking that step, recognizing, and it's okay to do that. You're not failing at self-care if you seek professional care. So really, giving people sort of the tools and awareness to know when do you take that first step.
When do you take that first step? And it's all about the first step, isn't it? Why is the first step so important?
Well, it's recognizing in yourself signs and symptoms that you need additional help, and then how do I get that? And the reality is there are multiple places that you can get it. Most people don't need to see a psychiatrist like myself. There are a number of primary care providers, other mental health providers. Any physician, has some experience in psychiatry.
Sure.
And talking to them about what you're experiencing will lead you down the path of how to get connected into the place that you need.
Well, that's incredible to hear it that way, because it's not that, you're saying you can talk to a myriad of people. that you trust, ultimately, right? And recognizing and taking that first step, especially after everything we've all been through. You know, it's been a journey. What a journey. But the journey forward, I've got to tell you, for our global audience, and especially around global goal number 3 of the United Nations global goals, this is powerful because this ties into health and well-being. It ties into empowering women and girls across the planet. It ties into empowering the entire society by helping to create an understanding and a sense of, again, resiliency that, you know, I can tackle this. You know, I'm having a difficult time, whatever that may be, but I can get through it because I know what the tools are. If you don't know where the tools are or what the tools are, it makes it a lot harder, doesn't it? So having that gives you the ability to just put it within a framework that hopefully is understandable and treatable. Would that be right? Yeah. And so today I'd like to ask you both, what is your call to action for our global audience? Dr. Hodzic?
Well, we definitely want to see a mentally healthy nation, mentally healthy world. So it's really access to care for everyone, and how do we all work together to get to that point? We can all learn from each other and help each other out.
Incredible. Incredible word. Powerful words, Dr. Hodzic. Amy Porfiri, what is your call to action, and how, most importantly, how can folks find out more about your work at the APAF?
Yeah. You know, I think just recognizing there's no health without mental health. And really, you know, to be a holistic person, you know, we need to care for the body, mind, and soul. And Foundation has resources that will help employers, school personnel, people in the justice system, and faith communities to really tools and resources that they can bring into the workplace to have a better understanding of mental health, how to support people in that sector, and really how to make a handoff to care if that's needed. Our website is apafdn.org, and there's resources, you know, all over the website. We're on social media as well. So, you know, I do invite your listeners to come check out our resources. Many of them are free. So, you know, we really want to get them out there for people to use and benefit from.
Amy Porfiri, Dr. Hodzic, the American Psychiatry Association Foundation, changing the world, leading the way, setting the path, and helping everyone on that first step. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.